the surgeons refused to operate on the millionaire. But the nurse did something that shocked everyone. Before we begin, a little roll call. Write down what city you're from, we're curious to know where we're being heard from. Now let's go. When a doctor tells a millionaire he won't save him, it sounds like a bad joke. When a second doctor says the same thing, it's uncomfortable. And when even the head of the department leaves the office, washing his hands, it becomes clear, this patient is doomed. And it's not about medicine at all. Are you kidding me? The man's voice breaks into a hoarse growl. On the snow-white sheets lies Miguel Arriago, a billionaire, a powerful man who is used to having his orders obeyed without question. He looks pathetic now, pale, gaunt face, drip in a vein, cold sweat on his forehead. But his gaze is still heavy, incandescent. Call the chief immediately. He continues. I do not ask, can or cannot. I'm saying, operate on me. Silence. Dr. Franco, a man in his 60s with eyes that have seen too many deaths, takes a short breath. He takes off his glasses, rubs the bridge of his nose. Señor Arriago, understand, we can't. You can do anything if I say so. The doctor shakes his head. Not this time. Miguel swallows. Something in the doctor's voice seems particularly disturbing to him. But there is a chance? Yes. Then what's the problem? Franco is silent. Tension builds in the room, like before a storm. I'll pay. Any amount. Name your price. The nurse in the corner freezes. He thinks it's all about the money. It doesn't occur to him that there are some things you can't buy. Franco gives him a long look. Not everyone wants to see you alive, Señor Arriago. There is silence in the room. In the corridor, it's a different world. Quiet, tense, with restrained whispers. Are they really not going to operate on him? Asks the young nurse Sophia. Looks like it, replies Nurse Luis glumly. But why? Are you brand new? Luis nods toward the room. This is Miguel Arriago. In a nutshell, he made his fortune through less than honorable means. So? Are we judges now? Luis sighs. The hospital doesn't want any trouble. He doesn't say out loud that Miguel has too many enemies. That this operation could make someone very unhappy. Sophia is about to object to something, but suddenly notices a woman standing against the far wall. Carla. An orderly who has worked here for over 30 years. Silently observing what's going on. Carla, what do you think? The woman remains silent. Then she says calmly. I think this man has been in this situation before. And he was lucky then. Sophia frowns. What are you talking about? Carla doesn't answer. She is already walking toward the ward. Miguel stares at the ceiling. He has never felt so helpless. The door opens. He shifts his gaze and sees her. A woman in her 50s. Tired eyes. Hands with thin but strong fingers. He realizes immediately that she is not a doctor. Who are you? An orderly, she says simply. He blinks. Something about her seems strangely familiar. So what, you're going to refuse to save me, too? Carla doesn't smile. I'm here to help. Help? Help you with what? Bring you tea? Sarcasm in her voice. Sometimes help isn't what you expect. Miguel looks at her carefully. Do you know who I am? I do. And you still want to help? Carla shrugs her shoulders. Do you know who I am? The question stumps him. He frowns, but says nothing. Carla lowers her gaze, shakes her head faintly, and walks out of the room, leaving him alone with the question. Carla closes the room door behind her, but the feeling that the patient's gaze is still drilling into her back hasn't gone away. She walks down the hallway, trying not to think. Not analyze. Just do her job. But something inside her is already stirring. That man. His eyes. She knew him. But from where? Are they really refusing to operate on him? Nurse Sophia's whisper is shaky. I told you, the hospital doesn't want any trouble, Luis replies, checking the list of appointments. That's nonsense, Sophia shakes her head. We're not executioners. If he has a chance, he should be saved. And if someone doesn't want to? She looks up at him. You mean, the mafia? Luis blinks. I don't mean anything. But tell me this, when surgeons refuse to perform an operation that could make them millions, it's clearly not about medicine. Sophia shifts her gaze to the closed door of the room. Inside lies a man they should be saving. But no one is doing it. Carla heads to the back room. Turns on the water, holds her palms under the spray for a long time. Why? She knows. Her fingers are trembling. It's that man. Something about his face seemed frighteningly familiar. And not just familiar. She remembered the feeling. She'd looked into eyes like this before. But where? And when? A hospital. 30 years ago. The same white walls, the same smell of antiseptic. Carla, young, full of energy, not yet tired of other people's deaths. And here comes the boy. Blood. Screaming. No room. Doctor, he's dying. We don't get paid for charity. And she's screaming that life isn't measured in banknotes. She's running, begging, pleading, trying to get them to take him. And they do. The surgeon, grumbling, agrees. The operation goes through. The boy survives. Carla remembers standing by his bedside. How he woke up. How he looked at her. His eyes. Shit. They were the same eyes. But not really. She turns off the water abruptly. Her heart pounds in her chest. Not him. But someone who was with him. Someone who looked the same way. And now that someone is lying in the ward, waiting to see if she'll save him. Carla presses her palms to her face. It's been 30 years. But does the past ever go away? Carla walks out of the back room. She sees Sophia arguing with Luis. It's not like we can just turn a blind eye. Sophia is seething. Carla silently walks past. She already knows what she's going to do. She walks back into the room. Miguel Arriaga opens his eyes. Looks at her. And for a second, something akin to fear appears in his gaze. She sits down on the chair next to her. I remember where I've seen eyes like that. His pupils dilate. Carla leans forward slightly. 30 years ago. Silence. And then I did the impossible. She stands up. The question is whether I'll do it again. 30 years ago. Same hospital. Same corridors, but the walls here are still peeling and the fluorescent lights don't look so hopelessly dim. Young Carla runs down the corridor. There's a boy on a gurney. Blood soaks through his shirt, spreads across the white sheets. We don't get paid for charity. A harsh voice from the superintendent. Doctor, he's dying. She almost screams, clenching her hands into fists. This is not the time to discuss money. This is always the time to discuss money. The doctor doesn't even look up. She wants to hit him. But instead she turns around and runs on, to another surgeon. A third. There's got to be someone. Are you sure he's gonna make it? Carla nods. I'm sure that if we don't do anything, he's definitely going to die. Dr. Franco stares at her in silence. I'll do it, he finally says. Carla sighs in relief. She has saved him. Not yet, but almost. She stands at the operating room door, watching the surgeons work. She's holding on. She doesn't immediately realize it was the assistant who said that. What? The guy, he nods. He's strong. If he gets out, he'll live a long time. She nods, unable to look away. A few hours later, the operation is over. Carla is the first to enter the room. There's a boy lying on the bed. Pale, but alive. She sits down beside him. An unfamiliar feeling rumbles through her chest. What is it? Pride? Or just relief? But then she sees the door open. And another boy peeks in. Younger. A year, maybe 2. Same eyes. Dark, attentive. Carla smiles at him. But he doesn't smile back. He just stares. In a way that turns her inside. And suddenly she realizes. Her rescue was in vain. Because this other boy is different. Carla blinks sharply. Where is she? Ah, the hospital. 30 years later. She's standing at the window, watching the rain dripping down the glass. Behind her back is the ward where the man lies, the one everyone is afraid to treat. She closes her eyes. Everything fell into place now. It was him. The boy who had looked into the room. The one who said nothing, but who understood everything. Miguel Arriago. She sighs. Then turns around and walks toward the ward. It's different this time. Or is it? Miguel opens his eyes. You're here again. Again, Carla answers calmly. Do you know something I don't? She shakes her head. You know everything. You've just forgotten it. Miguel frowns. Have we met before? Yes. He squints his eyes. When? She is silent. Then she speaks. When you looked into your brother's room. He freezes. His pupils dilate. What brother? Carla smiles, but there's no joy in that smile. Then you really have forgotten. She stands up. But I remember. Miguel opens his mouth, but has no time to say anything. She goes out. And leaves him alone. Miguel Arriago felt fear for the first time in years. Real, sticky fear, the kind that chills the back of his neck. He knew what it felt like to be taken out. He'd ordered people out himself many times. But he'd never been in their shoes. And now he's lying under an IV. And no one's gonna save him. The doctors aren't just afraid. They don't want to. And that look in the nurse's eye. Who the hell is she? There's a dim light in the resident's room. 3 surgeons sitting at a table, staring at each other in silence. Franco speaks first. We can't. He might live, another doctor, Dr. Mendoza, says slowly. He can, Franco agrees. But you realize what will happen if he survives. The third, Dr. Rivera, frowns. More like what happens if he dies. It's out of our hands to decide that. Whose hands are? Franco sighs heavily. This hospital belongs to the Lopez Foundation. Silence. Everyone understood. Carla knew this would happen. That the doctors would remain silent, hiding behind fear. She'd seen it 30 years ago. She walks down the hall, fast, determined. The operating room is dark. She turns on the light. She looks at the table. And she realizes. If no one would save him, she'd do it herself. Carla knew she was doing something crazy. She's not a surgeon. She's an orderly. But if no one wants to save the bastard, who but her will at least try? She stares at the operating table. One word pulses in her head, impossible. But in her chest, another, must. Miguel is in the room. He's getting worse. He can feel his body no longer obeying him. His head is spinning. There are no doctors or nurses around. He realizes he's been written off. She can't do this alone. Carla goes to the back room. Sophia sits there, nervously twirling a pen in her hands. You know they're doing total bullshit, right? Carla says. Sophia nods silently. So what, we're just going to turn a blind eye to it? What are we supposed to do? Carla tosses a couple of medical instruments on the table. Try it out. Sophia freezes. You're out of your mind. Maybe. It's illegal. Is it legal to kill someone by inaction? Sophia is silent. And then she speaks softly. What do I do? The doctors don't even realize that in one of the operating rooms they are now preparing for the impossible. Carla and Sophia are pulling out everything they can, instruments, drugs, suture material. Are you sure you can do this? Sophia asks. Carla smiles. No. But there's no choice. Getting into the room is easy. Carla looks inside. Miguel looks at her. You again. You either come with me now, or you'll be carried out with your feet tomorrow. He closes his eyes. And then, nods. This is not how it goes. Blood floods the table. Sophia's hands are shaking. Carla remembers every damn document she's ever read, every case she's ever seen. This has to work. It has to. He's getting away. He's not. Carla drops everything and starts direct cardiac massage. Come on, you bastard. You've killed so many times, try surviving for once. Time's slowing down. And suddenly, the monitor beeps. He's alive again. You've killed so many times, try to survive for once. Carla's last words before everything went out. Now it's silence. She sits in an empty room. There's water dripping somewhere. Is it a dream? A memory? Or maybe something important she's forgotten? The hospital. Carla stands in the hallway. She's holding a discharge folder. The boy she saved is asleep in his room. And next to him is the other one. A younger boy. The one who was looking at her the other day. What's your name? She asked him. He didn't answer. Just silently clutched at the edge of the hospital sheet, as if he might be chased away. Are you his brother? Nod. And his parents? No answer. Carla squatted down next to him. He's gonna be okay. No response. And then a whisper. Can we stay? She sighed. How do you explain to a child that a hospital is not home? But something in his gaze stopped her. Then she did something she shouldn't have done. She lied. She did. Carla opens her eyes. Fucking past. Always catches up when you least expect it. Sophia's there. He's alive, Carla. Carla nods. She knew he'd make it. She already saved him once. He wakes up in the operating room. The ceiling is floating. His arm can barely rise. Carla sits next to him. You knew who I was. It's not a question. She shrugs her shoulders. You knew, too. You just forgot. Silence. Why did you do it? She looks at him and suddenly smiles. I told you once before. Miguel freezes. Somewhere deep in his memory, in the blackest corner of his past, a forgotten voice flashes. He'll be fine. The voice. The same voice. The voice that once told him that everything would be okay. That his brother would survive. That they could stay. The truth in a nutshell. It whispers. It was you. Carla nods. I did the impossible for you. 30 years ago. And now, again. Carla stands at the door of the room, slowly coming to her senses. Just now she had told Miguel the truth. He remembered. But... now what? She looked at him. Pale, emaciated, but alive. She had saved him. But now his fate once again depended not on her, but on those who would rather leave him to die. Carla exhaled. Then she turned and walked out. Dr. Franco and the other surgeons froze when they saw her. You're operating on him, Carla said. Franco shook his head. You don't understand. I understand everything, Franco. And I take responsibility. Silence. You're an orderly, Carla. What the hell responsibility? She grinned. The kind you doctors don't have enough of. Franco squinted. Why are you doing this? He doesn't even remember you. Carla looked at him. Whether he remembers or not doesn't matter. She took a breath. And then she added. Debts are not paid with words, but with deeds. And walked out. Franco was silent for a long time. The other doctors waited. Then he nodded. Prep the OR. Time slowed. The monitors beeped in time with someone's heartbeat. Or was it a clock? Dr. Franco leaned over the operating table. Next to him, Mendoza and Rivera. All were silent. Everyone knew, it was either now or never again. Miguel felt his body slipping into the void. He had always thought death was darkness. But now? It was like an endless silence. And suddenly, a voice. A woman's voice. You can give up. Or you can come back. Miguel wanted to ask, who are you? But instead he heard his own voice. Should I? The voice didn't answer. And then. He's leaving. Franco clenched his teeth. One more time. A shock. The body shudders. The monitor goes silent. Carla stands in the corner, fists clenched. Come on, you son of a bitch, don't give up. Clear. The body's twitching. The monitor. A thin, steady beep. Pulse. Deep breath. Chest rising. Franco leans back. He's alive. Carla exhales slowly. She knew. But hearing it was different. The surgery lasted another 2 hours. And when it was over, Franco took off his mask and looked at Carla. You do realize what's going to happen to you now, don't you? She grinned. You can always find a new job. Franco shook his head. That's not what this is about. Silence. And then he said. You belong to him now. The silence was unnatural. Hospitals are rarely quiet. There's someone coughing, monitors beeping, nurses muttering. But now, nothing. It was like the whole world was holding its breath. Miguel opened his eyes. The ceiling is white. The smell of antiseptic. His chest ached, as if someone had torn a piece out of it and put it back in. He's alive. That's a fact. But why? Carla wasn't in the room. The doctors hadn't come in either. He tried to remember how he got here. Who saved him? But all that came back was a strange voice in the dark. There was a folder on the nightstand. Discharge. Miguel flipped through it. Standard data, tests, recommendations. And at the bottom of the page, a small signature. Almost imperceptible. But, all too familiar. He ran his finger over it. Name. Carla Morales. He froze. There it was. The answer to the ultimate question. He survived because she insisted. She, an orderly he didn't even remember, had saved him. Twice. He closed his eyes. That silence was ringing in his ears. Now it was frightening. Now it was too loud. Miguel stood at the hospital exit. The automatic doors were open. Take a step and you're outside. Fresh air. The hum of cars. The life he'd known before. But his legs wouldn't move. His world had turned upside down. He survived where he shouldn't have. He recognized who had saved him. He remembered that he already owed her once. But what now? He was a businessman. A billionaire. A man who didn't waste time on unnecessary emotions. He'd been taught there was no past, only future. And here he stands. And he can't take a step forward. Flashes of memory. You can give up. Or you can come back. I did the impossible for you. Debts are not paid in words, but in deeds. Miguel walks to the car. A black sedan waits at the entrance. The driver opens the door. Home, senor? Miguel nods. Sits down on the leather seat. Closes his eyes. The driver starts up. But after a second, Miguel speaks sharply. Stop. The car slows down. He gets out. He stands. Looks at the hospital building. Somewhere out there is Carla. He already owed her his life. Now he owes her again. He could have just left. He could have said to himself, that's enough. But he turns around and walks back. The doors close behind him. What's more important, gratitude or choice? Does a person change when given a second chance?